Broke single dad buys baby food. With his last money, lonely NFL star behind him says, "I'll buy them all." "You're short by $8.47. The cashier's voice broke through the hum of the supermarket like a glass of cold water to the face. Marcus Hayes froze. His hand hovered over the counter, holding out the last of his change, 3 quarters, a nickel, and a few pennies worn down by time and desperation. Behind him, his son Tyler started to cry. It was a tired, hungry cry, the kind that echoed in silence and made everyone around uncomfortable. He was strapped into a faded plastic shopping cart, his tiny legs kicking the air, cheeks flushed with heat and the sticky remnants of a half-eaten cracker. Marcus forced a thin, apologetic smile. "Can you take the formula off?" "You didn't buy formula," the cashier replied, still focused on the screen. "Oh." Marcus lowered his eyes. Of course he hadn't. There was only one item on the conveyor belt, a single pack of off-brand baby food jars. Stage 2. That was all he had come for, all he could afford, or thought he could. He dug into his other pocket, pulling out 2 more dimes and a bent penny. He counted again, then again, still short. Behind him, someone muttered just loud enough to be heard. "Shouldn't have kids if you can't afford them." Marcus didn't turn around. He crouched beside the cart, pretending to adjust Tyler's blanket while his hands searched his coat pockets for something. Anything. His fingers touched nothing but old receipts and lint, and finally, his fingertips brushed a quarter. He pulled it out with cautious hope, but as he did, another penny slipped through his grasp and clinked onto the floor. It rolled in a slow arc beneath the cart. Marcus lowered himself to the floor. It was cold. His knees ached. He reached for the penny, and Tyler whimpered above him, reaching down toward his head with his chubby fingers. He smiled up at him. "Almost, buddy." Almost. Someone in line let out a loud sigh. Another shifted noisily. The tension behind him thickened. Marcus stood again, holding the rescued penny like it was made of gold. He placed it on the counter. Every cent counted. The cashier raised an eyebrow. "Still $8.47 short." Marcus's mouth opened, then closed. He didn't want to say it, but he would. He was about to tell them to put the baby food back. Then a calm, clear voice from behind. "I'll take them all." Marcus turned. The woman behind him stood with quiet composure. She looked to be in her early 30s, tall, with long blonde hair cascading over one shoulder. She wore a fitted leather jacket and held a small shopping basket, protein bars, a football magazine, a bottle of sports drink. She stepped forward and placed her basket on the belt. "I'll cover his items," she told the cashier gently, then looked at Marcus. "Please." Marcus blinked, his mouth opened again, but no words came. He looked at Tyler, whose cries had turned into gentle hiccups. He stared at the woman, wide-eyed. The woman smiled at him, then turned back to the cashier. "And add a pack of wipes," she said, "and a few of those fruit pouches." The cashier looked from her to Marcus, then began scanning again. Marcus's chest felt tight, not from stress this time, but from the strange mix of gratitude and shame he didn't know how to carry. He tried to speak, but his throat tightened. He began. She lifted a hand gently, not to silence him, but to stop him from saying something he might regret. "You don't owe me anything," she said. "He deserves to go home clean and full, that's all." Marcus looked into her eyes. There was something in them, something tired but kind. Not pity, not superiority, just a quiet understanding. A look that said, "I've been there too." He swallowed, then nodded. No words, just the smallest gesture of respect. Behind them, the line had gone quiet. Maybe some still judged, maybe some felt ashamed, but none of that mattered because something rare had happened. A stranger stepped in. Not out of guilt, not for attention, but because she saw someone worth helping. What Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that this woman, this kind, quiet stranger, had already crossed paths with him once before. And soon, she would again. If you believe the world needs more moments like this, if you believe in compassion without conditions, tap that bell button. It helps us share these stories with more hearts just like yours. Marcus stared at the receipt as the cashier handed it to the woman behind him. He did not move. His hand tightened around the shopping bag she had just paid for. baby food, wipes, a few fruit pouches, even a small plush toy for Tyler. He could feel the weight of each item, not just in the bag, but in his chest. He turned to her slowly. His eyes were tired, the kind of tired that did not come from lack of sleep, but from years of quiet, grinding survival. He looked her straight in the eye. "I'm not a charity case," he said. It was not a protest. It was not anger. It was a wound. The words came out low and strained, edged with something raw. Rachel Torres did not flinch. She looked at him, not with pity, not with condescension, but with calm and something deeper. Recognition. "I know," she said gently. "I never thought you were." Marcus looked away for a second, trying to steady his breath. He was not used to this. Whatever this was, kindness made him nervous. It always came with strings. He had learned that the hard way. But then Rachel spoke again, her voice softer than before. "When I was a kid," she said, "there were days I went without meals too. I remember the hunger, the shame. I remember the way people looked at my mother when she asked for help." She paused. "So, I'm not helping out of pity. I just know the feeling." That stopped him. His eyes flicked back to hers, the hardness in them giving way to a flicker of surprise. For a moment, he said nothing. Tyler let out a small laugh behind him, distracted by the plush toy sticking out of the bag. His tiny fingers reached for it, and Marcus turned slightly to steady the cart. He looked back at Rachel. The fight in him had softened just a little. He gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod. Not surrender, not defeat, just respect. "Thank you," he murmured. She smiled at him then. Not wide, not showy, just enough to say, "You are welcome." He turned the cart and walked toward the exit. The automatic doors opened with a quiet hush, letting in the cool air of early evening. Marcus pushed Tyler slowly toward the parking lot, still thinking about her, about this woman with blonde hair and steady eyes who had not only helped him, but understood him. At the edge of the lot, he paused beside a row of clearance bins near the exit. He reached into the shopping bag and pulled out one item. The bright green organic pouch Rachel had asked the cashier to add last minute. It was mango and apple flavored, probably organic, probably overpriced. Marcus stared at it in his hand for a few seconds. Then, gently, he walked back inside and placed it carefully on the impulse shelf near the register. He kept the baby food, the wipes, the toy, because Tyler already loved it. But the pouch, that was more than they needed. And Marcus had a rule. Take only what you cannot give back. Outside, he strapped Tyler into the car seat of an old dented sedan that had seen better days. The interior smelled faintly of motor oil and worn leather. He was humming now, babbling nonsense sounds. The toy clutched tightly in his lap. Marcus got behind the wheel and sat there for a long moment. He had not expected anyone to help him tonight. He certainly had not expected her. He glanced in the rearview mirror. Tyler grinned at his own reflection, then waved the toy in the air like a trophy. Marcus let out a breath he had been holding all day. He did not know her name. She had not offered it, and he had not asked, but her face stayed with him. Calm, kind, familiar in a way he could not quite place. He turned the key in the ignition. The engine coughed once, then started. As he pulled out of the parking lot, he whispered to himself, just loud enough for Tyler not to hear, "I'm not a charity case." And somehow tonight, for the first time in a long time, he believed it. The view from the 28th floor of Torres Foundation headquarters stretched across the skyline. Glass and steel shimmered in the morning sun, reflecting a city Rachel Torres had helped shape. But her office was quiet. Too quiet. She stood at the window, fingers turning a small, worn silver bracelet. The clasp was frayed, the metal dulled. She had held it this way 1,000 times, out of habit, out of pain. She opened the clasp. Inside, etched in shaky letters, M. Hayes. A knock broke the silence. "Come in," she said without turning. Vanessa, her longtime trainer and friend, entered with a stack of papers. "Sponsor reports for the youth center," she said, then paused. "You're holding that bracelet again." Rachel smiled faintly. "Do I always do that?" "Only when you're thinking about the accident." Rachel let the quiet stretch before answering. "I dreamed about it again last night," she said, still staring at the city. "I was 9. The bus crash was terrible. They said it was black ice. I never believed them. Most of the kids got out. I didn't. Vanessa sat quietly, listening. I was trapped in the back. Water everywhere. I couldn't breathe. I thought it was over. Then someone broke the window. She turned from the window, holding the bracelet between her fingers. It was a boy, 12 maybe, soaking wet. He reached in, grabbed my hand and said, "I got you. You're safe now." Then he pulled me out. Rachel paused. They never found him. No name, no file. Paramedics guessed he was a local kid. All I had was this. She held up the bracelet, which must have come off his wrist when he pulled me out. Vanessa nodded. "You've been searching ever since." Not openly, but in my heart. I think I never stopped. That afternoon, Rachel visited Hands of Hope, a non-profit supported by Torres Foundation. It offered supplies and support for single parents. She came often, quietly, no press. As she passed the distribution desk, she stopped. A man stood there, a toddler in his arms, signing a clipboard. Paint stained his jeans. His boots were worn, his posture strong, steady. The boy on his hip giggled and clapped. Rachel's heart caught. The baby from the supermarket. The man turned. It was him. They locked eyes, familiarity passing between them. Rachel stepped closer. "I didn't expect to see you again." Marcus nodded. "Neither did I. But thank you. Tyler's doing better." "He's beautiful," Rachel said, smiling. "We're just here for diapers. They said they restock Thursdays." "I know," she said. "I fund this place." Marcus looked surprised. Then he nodded. She hesitated. "Do you still work construction?" Marcus tilted his head. "Yeah, side gigs when I can, mostly cash work." "We have facilities at Torres Foundation," she said, "always needing repairs. If you're interested, I could set up a contract. Flexible hours, fair pay." Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. "Because I'm broke?" "No," she said softly. "Because you're capable and honest, and I think you deserve a break." He held her gaze, then shifted Tyler to his other arm. "I'll think about it. That's all I ask." Marcus turned and walked out. Rachel remained where she was, her pulse louder than it should have been. She hadn't asked his full name, not yet. But something about him, his voice, his presence, stayed with her like smoke. She looked down at the bracelet still warm in her hand. "Monsieur Hayes," she whispered, and for the first time in years, she wondered if the boy from the accident had just come back. The maintenance room behind Torres Foundation's main building was nothing fancy, just a wide concrete space with flickering lights, battered tool chests, and equipment in various stages of decay. But to Marcus Hayes, it felt like purpose. For the first time in a long while, he had a routine. He arrived early each morning, Tyler nestled in a second-hand baby carrier on his chest. He slept soundly against him as he worked, soothed by the rhythm of hammers and drills. Marcus did the best he could with limited supplies. He tracked every nail, every screw, every fix. He never padded his hours, never lied about repairs. When a part was still usable, he said so. People noticed, especially Rachel. One Thursday, she walked into the maintenance room unannounced. The scent of paint thinner hit her instantly, but she smiled through it. Her sneakers squeaked softly on the concrete as she approached the far end of the space. Marcus was crouched beside a storage unit, sleeves rolled, dust on his arms. Tyler sat nearby in a cardboard box, giggling, waving a piece of PVC pipe like a magic wand. "Is that safe?" Rachel asked, smiling. Marcus looked up, surprised. "No edges. He's fine, just—" He paused, testing his construction site. Rachel stepped closer. Tyler was surrounded by makeshift blocks, two small boards up front like a ramp and tubing for a pretend crane. "He said he wanted to build a house," Marcus added. "This is his training ground." Rachel laughed, genuine and unguarded. Marcus felt something stir. It had been a long time since he heard laughter like that, soft, honest, from someone who meant it. "He looks happier now than ever before," Rachel said. "Happier simply to be fed," Marcus answered. A week later, Rachel returned. This time there was no laughter. Marcus was pacing outside the building, Tyler limp in his arms. His cheeks were flushed, forehead damp. "He's burning up," he said, panicked. "Was going to take him to the clinic, but my car won't start." Without hesitation, Rachel unlocked her SUV. "Get in." Marcus climbed in without argument. The ride was quiet, except for Tyler's occasional whimpers. Rachel drove fast but careful. Marcus sat stiffly, hands clenched. At the clinic, Rachel handled the paperwork. Marcus never left Tyler's side. A simple fever, the doctor said. Nothing serious, but enough to shake any parent. Outside on a bench, they waited for the prescription. Marcus cleared his throat. "Thank you." His voice was quiet, almost cracked. It was not a casual thank you. It came from somewhere deeper. Rachel didn't smile this time. She only nodded. "You're welcome." Tyler rested against Marcus's chest, eyes already drifting closed. "You're a good father," Rachel said softly. Marcus looked down. "I'm trying." That's all it takes. In the weeks that followed, Rachel began visiting the maintenance room more often. She always had a reason, new work orders, updated schedules, but she lingered longer than needed. Marcus started saving Tyler's best moments to share with her. How he danced to the hum of the power drill or his obsession with measuring tape, and Rachel found herself laughing more, smiling longer, coming back. Something was growing. Not romance, not yet, but something warm, something real. Marcus, who once kept the world at arm's length, now listened for her footsteps. Rachel, who had trusted no one but herself, began waiting for the moment he looked up and said, "Morning." In that dust-scented space, among tools and giggles, between sick days and soft thank yous, a friendship began. Not because they were broken, but because in each other's eyes they finally felt seen. It started with a photo, a grainy snapshot taken on someone's phone, posted to social media with a caption that was more poison than praise. It showed Rachel Torres, elegant, composed, perfectly dressed, kneeling beside a beat-up sedan, holding a baby boy wrapped in a faded blue blanket. The moment had been innocent, private, a fleeting second outside the family center when Marcus was fumbling with the car seat straps, and Rachel had scooped Tyler into her arms with practiced ease. She had smiled down at the little boy. Tyler had laughed. Someone had taken the shot. By morning, the image was everywhere. NFL star cradles poor man's baby. Is it real compassion or a PR stunt? Rich athlete, poor baby. Is Rachel Torres playing savior for the cameras? NFL player uses struggling single dad to rebrand humanity into her foundation. The headlines screamed. Opinions poured in. Some praised her, most did not. Talk shows speculated. Internet trolls tore her apart. Even sponsors started asking questions. Rachel read it all in silence. She sat at her desk in the high-rise office, scrolling through an endless feed of comments, her face unreadable. Her phone buzzed every 30 seconds, Vanessa trying to get through, reporters asking for statements, crisis managers offering spin. She answered none of them. Instead, she closed the laptop, stood up, and walked to the window. Her reflection in the glass stared back at her, polished, successful, poised. But inside, she felt like the little girl in the bus again, invisible and alone. That afternoon, Marcus was under a sink fixing a leak when his phone buzzed on the floor. He wiped his hands on a rag and glanced at the screen. A news alert. He opened the article, then another, and another. The words hit like punches. Rachel's name smeared across headlines. Tyler's photo online for the world to see. He stood there, frozen. Fury boiled up in his chest, not because they used his image, but because they had turned her into a villain. Without thinking, he dropped the wrench, wiped his hands, and headed straight for the main building. The receptionist at Torres Foundation hesitated when Marcus stormed into the lobby. He did not have an appointment. He did not need one. "I need to see Rachel," he said. "Now." His voice left no room for argument. 2 minutes later, the elevator doors opened onto the executive floor. Rachel looked up as Marcus walked in. She had not expected anyone, least of all him. Her eyes were tired, makeup faintly smudged at the corners like she had rubbed away a few tears and pretended she hadn't. Marcus stepped inside, shutting the door behind him. "You don't have to take this alone," he said without preamble. She blinked. "It's fine." "No, it's not," he snapped, then caught himself. "They are dragging your name through the mud using me, using Tyler." Rachel turned her gaze away. "It will pass." Marcus shook his head. "That doesn't mean you have to let it." Silence stretched between them, and then Rachel exhaled, slow and shaky. "I'm not crying because of the headlines," she whispered, her voice trembling for the first time. Marcus stepped closer. She continued, eyes locked on the floor. "I'm crying because for once someone spoke up for me." "You did." He said nothing. Rachel looked up. Her eyes shimmered. "When I was a kid," she said, "I used to dream that someone would stand between me and the world just once. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to." Marcus swallowed hard. "You just did that," she finished, her voice cracking. And just like that, the walls she had built around herself began to crumble. Marcus nodded slowly. "I didn't do anything special." "You showed up," she said. "That's more than most ever did." For a moment, they just stood there, two people who had grown used to carrying their own weight, finally realizing they did not have to. Not always. Outside the window, the city buzzed with noise and opinions and the constant churn of scandal. But in that office, it was quiet, real, and for the first time in a long time, Rachel Torres let herself feel safe. The envelope arrived in the morning mail, slipped between an overdue utility bill and a flyer for discount plumbing. Marcus almost tossed it aside, but the logo in the top corner caught his eye. Torres Foundation. He tore it open with a calloused thumb, brow furrowed. Inside was a formal letter printed on thick cream paper. It was direct and professional, signed in blue ink. "We would like to offer you the position of Facilities Operations Manager. Full-time, benefits included. Start date flexible." Marcus sat on the couch, the letter resting in his lap like something too heavy to lift again. He stared at it for a long time. Facilities Manager, not a handyman, not a temp worker fixing leaks between diaper changes. A manager, a leader. He looked across the room at Tyler, curled up on the floor with his toy and a blanket that still smelled faintly of Rachel's perfume. He wanted to say yes, but the old voices crept in. "You are not qualified. You are not that guy. They will find out who you really are." He folded the letter and slipped it back into the envelope. That evening, he stayed late at the building, turned off the lights, locked up, drove home slowly, windshield wipers clicking back and forth across light drizzle. The sky had turned an unforgiving gray. Rain fell in scattered sheets, soaking the cracked sidewalk and the faded welcome mat in front of his small apartment. He was feeding Tyler when the knock came. Not loud, just steady. He opened the door and saw her standing there. Rachel. Her blonde hair was damp from the rain, her jacket clinging to her shoulders. In her arms was a thick folded blanket, a deep green lined with soft white fleece. She held it out. "For Tyler," she said. Marcus stepped aside wordlessly and let her in. The apartment was modest, clean. A lamp in the corner glowed softly, casting a warm light across the room. Rachel bent down and gently draped the blanket over Tyler, who reached for it immediately and smiled. Marcus stood by the kitchen counter, unsure what to say. "I got your letter," he said finally. "I figured you did. You didn't have to come." "I know," she said. He hesitated, then added, "I'm not sure I can do that job." Rachel looked at him for a long moment. Then she walked over slowly, carefully, like someone approaching a wounded animal. She reached for his hand. "Marcus," she said quietly, "do not walk away from someone who believes in you." His throat tightened. "I've made mistakes," he said. "So have I. I dropped out of high school, never finished a thing I started. You raised a child alone. You fix what's broken. You show up, that counts for more." Marcus blinked hard, fighting the sting in his eyes. "I'm not used to this," he said. "Someone seeing more than what's on the surface." "I see you," Rachel said. She squeezed his hand, and something broke open inside him. He lowered his head and let the tears fall, silent, unshaken, as if they had been waiting for years. Rachel stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, steady and firm. She did not let go. Neither did he. For the first time in a long time, Marcus Hayes let someone hold the weight with him. And when the rain finally stopped and Rachel turned to go, he said two words that changed everything. "I'm in." The city shimmered below like a sea of glass and light, but Rachel Torres was not looking at it. She sat alone on the rooftop terrace of Torres Foundation headquarters, the wind teasing loose strands of her hair. Her jacket hung forgotten behind her chair. In her hand was a small silver bracelet, worn, scratched, dulled with time. She opened it gently. Inside, etched in faint, clumsy letters, M. Hayes. She had carried it for over 20 years. The memory was no longer a blur. The crash, the water, the boy's voice. She had spent her life wondering if she would ever find him, if she would ever say, "Thank you." That night she sent Marcus a message. "Can you meet me on the rooftop tomorrow morning? There's something I need to ask." His reply came quickly. "Sure, I'll be there." The next morning, Marcus stepped onto the rooftop just after sunrise. A chill hung in the air. His jacket was zipped halfway, dust still smudged faintly on his sleeves. Rachel was already there, arms loosely crossed. She looked at him for a long moment, then spoke. "Marcus, what's your full name?" He blinked. "Marcus Hayes." She reached into her pocket and pulled out the bracelet, holding it in her open palm. "Does this look familiar?" Marcus stepped closer. The moment he saw it, his expression shifted. He picked it up carefully, opened it. "I haven't seen this in over 20 years, he murmured. "This was mine. My dad gave it to me when I was little." He looked up, confused. "Where did you get it?" Rachel's voice was soft. "There was a crash at my school bus route. I was trapped in the back, couldn't breathe. I thought I was going to die." Marcus's eyes widened. "I remember that crash," he said slowly. "I lived nearby, saw it happen. I ran over. Someone said there was still a girl inside." He trailed off. "You?" Rachel nodded, eyes shining. "You broke the window. You were just a boy. You reached in and said," Marcus whispered, "I got you. You're safe now." Her breath caught. "You were him." "I never knew who you were," Marcus said, still stunned. "Just that you were scared and I had to get you out. And this," Rachel pointed to the bracelet, "was still in my hand when they carried me out." Marcus reached into his wallet and pulled out a folded, yellowed scrap of paper. He handed it to her. She opened it. A rough list scribbled at the bottom in a child's hand. "Blonde girl, back seat. Saved." "I kept that ever since," Marcus said. "I always wondered what happened to you." Rachel couldn't speak. Her throat was tight with emotion. She stepped closer and gently leaned her head against his shoulder. Marcus froze for a moment, then slowly took her hand in his. They stood there together, wrapped in silence, surrounded by wind and sky. Below them, the city kept moving. But up on that rooftop, time had paused. "You saved my life," Rachel whispered. "And you gave mine back," Marcus replied. She smiled faintly. "Maybe we belonged to each other all along. Just didn't know how to find our way back." Marcus didn't answer. He only held her hand tighter. And as the morning sun broke over the skyline, something lost long ago was finally found. 1 year later, the maintenance room was gone, replaced by a glass-walled office on the 3rd floor of Torres Foundation's operations wing. But Marcus still showed up early every morning, coffee in one hand, toolbox in the other, just in case. His new title, Director of Facilities and Community Outreach. But most people still just called him Marcus. In the past year, life had shifted. He had gone from sleeping on a worn-out couch to helping build programs that changed lives. His proudest project, a workshop. At the back of Torres Foundation's headquarters, where the storage units once stood, now stood a space he had helped design. Fresh Start, a skills program for single parents, free construction training, child care on site, hot meals, job placement help. All the things he had once needed now offered freely to others. Rachel had trusted him from day one. "You know what it should be," she told him. "Build it your way." So he did. Twice a week, Marcus taught young moms and dads how to use tools, hold a hammer, and believe in themselves. They came in uncertain. They left with dust-streaked hands and lifted chins. He saw himself in every one of them. That morning, Rachel stood with Tyler at the curb of his preschool. The little boy, now 3, was taller, chattier, and still inseparable from his stuffed toy. Marcus approached just as Rachel kissed Tyler's forehead. "Ready?" he asked. Rachel smiled and took his hand. Always. They walked back to the car. No rush, no stress, just steady love. That afternoon, Rachel stood behind a podium at Torres Foundation's new community wing. A few press, a few staff. Cameras clicked softly. Today is more than the launch of a charity, she began. It's a promise that no parent should feel alone and no child should go without. She turned slightly, gesturing toward Marcus. I'm proud to introduce the new CEO of the Fresh Start Foundation, she said. A man who knows what it means to fall and rise again. Marcus Hayes. Applause rose gently. Marcus stepped forward. No tie, just a crisp shirt and quiet strength. He looked over the crowd, then began. I used to think survival was enough, he said, just getting through the day. But someone showed me life is about more than that. It's about being seen, about having someone believe in you when you don't believe in yourself. He glanced at Rachel. She didn't save me. She stood beside me. That's what Fresh Start is about, standing beside someone until they can stand on their own. The applause this time came with misty eyes. Later that evening, when the lights and speeches were over, Marcus, Rachel, and Tyler sat together on a bench in the park. The sunset bathed the trees in gold. The breeze smelled like cut grass. Tyler slept in Marcus's arms, wrapped in the same green blanket Rachel had once brought them on a stormy night. Rachel rested her head on Marcus's shoulder, one hand on Tyler's back, the other curled into his. They said nothing. They did not need to. This was not a fairy tale, not a perfect ending. It was something better. It was real. A father who almost gave up, a woman who never stopped searching, a little boy who brought them together. Thank you for watching this heartwarming story. If it made you smile, cry, or give you a little more hope, it did what it was meant to do. If this story touched you and reminded you of the importance of kindness and second chances, don't forget to subscribe to Touchdown Diva and hit the bell. I'll continue sharing important and impactful stories. See you in the next one.